Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
Going great. Getting ready for the holidays to really kickstart. So, just waiting for that to begin and preparing for it by diving in with business and stuff. What about you, Raphael?
Yeah, same. Melanie, my fiance, for those of you guys who are listening, she went to Target, which is obviously a bad move, but she ended up buying a bunch of throw pillows and a lot of things pertaining to Christmas. She's Puerto Rican, and in Puerto Rico, it's a very much a big deal. Christmas is, and I'm actually half Puerto Rican as well, so I've definitely experienced that firsthand. And it's very much a festive environment here at my house, and I'm sure it is at yours as well. I know your fiance pretty well as well, and I'm sure she decked out the halls, as they say.
Oh, she definitely did. And it's funny that you were going on with Target. Yeah, you go to Target to get some toothpaste, and you come out with a full basket of decorations. Yeah, Gotta love Target for that.
It's gonna eat me out of house and home, but it's all right. I enjoy all the festive nature of the season. And speaking of a festive nature, I mean, we really had a phenomenal conversation today with a special person. Her name is Steffany Boldrini. She's the principal of Monte Carlo Real Estate Investments, along with podcast host of a very popular commercial real estate podcast that you guys definitely should listen to. During our conversation, we dove into a variety of different topics. The first topic we focused on was her sales background. She, prior to jumping in full-time into the commercial real estate investment space, she was a sales professional at a variety of different roles, primarily in software sales. But each time she was at these different companies, she would have a significant amount of success within her role. So we talked about some of the lessons that she learned throughout those experiences and some of the strategies that she employed in order to become a top professional within that particular company. Along with that, we talked about her taking the leap of faith and starting her own investment firm, where she now focuses on investing in self-storage opportunities across the country. And then we dove in a little bit into her investment thesis and understanding how she analyzes opportunities from a macro and micro level. And then finally, we talk about how her podcast, the Commercial Real Estate Investment Podcast from A to Z, has really impacted her career positively, and how she hopes to utilize her brand building efforts on the platform and other different mediums that she's on now to start raising capital for larger deals and to scale her business in the commercial real estate investment space. So really was an impactful conversation. We had a really good conversation. Jeff, do you want to add anything to that?
No, you pretty much covered most of the bases and everything. She was definitely a delight to learn her story and her journey and her growth, is what I want to say, both with her business and her career and her mindset. So I know you guys will get a lot out of this episode. So I'm looking forward to you guys commenting and rating us after you listen to this one. So
definitely. Yeah. And I'll reiterate that we really have appreciated all your guys' support thus far regarding the podcast. We've gotten many 5-star reviews as of late, and we have seen the improvement in our performance as far as the downloads are concerned. So please keep those 5-star reviews coming if you do gain some value from this podcast episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the podcast. All right. Welcome, Steffany. Great to see you this afternoon for us. And I believe it's still morning for you. So
it is great to see you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
That's awesome. Yeah. And for those of you guys who are listening, actually, I listened to Steffany's podcast several times prior to reaching out to her. She did provide a lot of great content, and I thought, it'd be great to kind of reach out and get a feel for, her backstory and, how she's been able to scale her operations as a result. So welcome again. We really do appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you.
For sure. So what we usually do when we first start off our podcast is we like to learn about a little bit more about the person that's across the table from us. So if you don't mind kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit about your story.
Sure. So I'm originally from Brazil and was born and raised in a small ranch in a small town, and I was blessed enough to come here when I was 18, and have been here for a while. And I'm very thankful to be in this country and all the opportunities that it provides. My career was mainly in tech sales, just by a matter of landing in Silicon Valley, and then decided to jump into real estate after I was dating somebody who was a very successful real estate investor. And it's been a great journey so far.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, so Brazil, that's one place I've always wanted to go visit. I've visited several countries in South America. My dad's Puerto Rican, so I've been around several times, and we have a good friend of ours who's married to a Brazilian as well, and she says great things about the country. So hopefully one day I can go visit. I'd love to one day. So
I actually tried to go, but I didn't fully realize that you from America that you need your passport and the visa to get to Brazil at the time that I tried to go there. So I was shamefully denied when I tried to go. Yeah, I set all that up, and that was like I got at the airport, and they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you need your visa." And I had someone else doing the booking and everything, and I didn't had any part of it. I just showed up like I thought I was ready to go. So excited. No. Yeah, got shut down. I had
was that when you were in South America working down there?
Yeah, but I was coming from the States, so yeah. And I had several people that was going to meet me down there that could speak Portuguese and everything, and so I was like, I was so excited. But yeah, so everyone else went to the trip. I was stuck here. So yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna go though because of the there's so many sites I want to see there. So
and it has been lifted. You don't need a visa anymore.
Oh really? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. I'm going now.
So if you guys are listening to this, moral of the story is to check to see if you actually need a visa to travel to the country.
Or anything of that sort.
You're always learning in this podcast.
Absolutely. So you said that your boyfriend, correct, that got you interested in commercial real estate. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What exactly? At the time. What exactly drew you to it? Was it the way, like what he talked about, or was there a particular thing that you were like, I'm getting in this as well, or?
Yeah, I was dabbing into angel investing at the time, and with like the top incubator here, Y Combinator. So I was investing in a couple of their startups, and it was so clear very quickly that real estate is a much better form of investment, at least compared to angel investing, because there's a lot of risk as an angel investor. You're going to lose most of it. And, when the VCs come in, they will take a huge chunk of it. You need to give the same percentage in order to still own that percentage, and many other things. So the risks are very high in angel investing, and real estate has so many other advantages, leverage and tax benefits and appreciation. And so I decided to start taking notes out of everything that came out of his mouth. And it's a 30-page document right now. So it was a great journey.
It sounds like you have a makings of a ebook coming up. So your 30 pages, I mean, a few more and you got an ebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then the like you mentioned, the angel investing piece. I had a friend of mine in college who actually was at Y Combinator. I think his company eventually ended up being Fountain. It was a company out there. I think they do HR software, but yeah, it is very much it's a unique business in that you invest in 20 companies and most of them conk out. And then there's one that ends up doing extremely well, but it is much different than real estate, especially if you kind of have a formula with how you approach the investing process. The likelihood of you losing all your invested capital is much less than in a scenario whereby you're in, an angel investing setting. So I can definitely see why that would be something that attracts you as a result. So and
even if that company made it, you're still not going to make that much because you still need to be upfronting money. And so it's a lot easier to invest in the stock market, I think, or in the secondary market for startups, where you're investing in a company that is proven and they have traction and customers and have been growing and have Series C or D, but they're not public yet. So there are better ways to approach it.
Definitely, that makes complete sense. So prior to you getting into the commercial real estate space, I noticed that you had various different sales roles in the past, and you performed extremely well in those environments. So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on of your experience was, what type of strategies did you employ to become one of those top sales professionals? Because we have people, just to give you some context to our audience, I mean, we have plenty of people that are either brokers or, commercial lenders, or really it's related to the commercial real estate industry. So some of the things that we like to provide as far as insights to some of the people who are listening to our podcast is some of the ways they can improve in their career, and then also on the investing side as well. So if you could kind of touch on maybe some of the strategies that you employed during your sales career that made you such a successful career, such a successful person in that setting.
Yeah, that's a great question, Raphael. So it's not that hard, and it's something I tell my listeners every single time, all the time. Follow up, follow up, follow up. It's as simple as following up, checking in, even if they might not buy or sell a property today, they might later, taking notes. And, as we all know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen and ask questions more than you talk. We all know that people feel like a conversation has gone a lot better when they do most of the talking and they enjoy conversation. So yeah, it's just taking notes, following up, and listening.
That's great. Yeah, that's and it's so simple. The insights that you provide are very simple, because in reality, that's what it is. I mean, people want to feel like they've been heard, and it's not that you remain silent and then just think about what you're going to say next. It's about really taking, because that's I've been in many conversations where that's the case. It's like I say something, and then the response that they give me is indicates, oh, you didn't listen to a word something I just said.
Yeah,
you're just waiting for your time to speak, and that's obviously not a very beneficial approach when you're in a sales setting, and really in any setting outside of just sales. But and I like the fact that you say taking notes, because we can't remember everything about all the interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis, and so having some form of like CRM or just anything that works for you to be able to recall different information that's pertinent to the last conversation you had with someone can be of extreme value. And then the following up piece, I mean, that's number one, obviously. And a lot of times, like, people take, and this is something that I did too, because I'm an engineer by trade. I was a industrial engineer and software engineer for about 5 years, and then got into commercial real estate, and I had no sales background whatsoever. And so there would be times where I'd reach out to someone for the first time. We'd have a good conversation. They'd say they'd do something, and then it doesn't happen. And I think, oh, they did it because they're, not interested. Where in reality, we're all busy professionals. We're not, they may have just forgotten. So there had definitely been times where I've caught myself and said, okay, maybe I should just try again. He or she seemed very interested at the time. So if anything, I'm doing a disservice to the other person by not reaching out, because maybe they did very much want to get this done. And, for some reason they decided that, or they forgot completely. So I think those are 3 key insights that are very valuable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so many brokers don't reach out, don't follow up. It's insane. So many people that are trying to sell me software in the real estate world now, they don't follow up. It's it's crazy.
Yeah, and even worse amongst brokers. Like I can't tell you how many times I've called someone for more information because I have someone who's interested in something, and I can't get a hold of them. I mean, I've tried email, calling. I mean, carrier pigeon. Just kidding, but I mean that's how you feel like you almost have to do at some point, because all the other methods just don't work. So,
yeah. Speaking of follow up, since I'm in the commercial GC realm, that's how I get a lot of actual contracts, is just following up. Sometimes people, they don't have the actual time. They're not trying to be rude. They literally just don't have the time to sit there and go over a project. And so, they tell me, hey, call me next month and we'll discuss it. And sure enough, just write it down and follow up next month. And it does wonders to do the follow up. And I like what you said, Steffany, about, 2 ears, 1 mouth, do what God gave you. And that leads me into the faith, and also leads me into what what made you decide to take the leap of faith and own your own investment firm?
Just I didn't like, working for somebody else, even though we all work more as entrepreneurs. And, in hindsight, honestly, I would have probably just made sure that I have some properties and I have that same amount of income before taking the leap. So that's one thing I would definitely have done differently. Or, if I was starting this in my 20s, I would definitely have started as a broker in the commercial field. You get to know so many people, you see deals, you can, buy properties at a discount because before they go to market, you can partner up, with people that are looking for purchasing properties and put your commission in there. So those are the two things that I would have done differently.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Yeah, that's some great insights. And that's kind of the lens that I used as I was looking to, because I didn't have necessarily a background in real estate beforehand, but as I was looking to transition to something different, real estate being what I was interested in, I started realizing what are some of the best ways to break into the industry. And brokerage is definitely can be a very good way to do that because of the relationships you build, because of the deal flow that you see, because of the analysis piece. I mean, you're looking at deals every single day. I mean, so you get a very good understanding of what's out there, how the market dynamics are at play. And then you get to learn who the players are, the different contacts you're going to need in order to get a transaction from start to finish. You're essentially the quarterback of the deal. So you know how all those moving parts occur. And that could be a great way to do it. There's also, the lending side and the legal side. But, I took a personality profile for professions, and lawyer and judge were the lowest by far. So I knew I was never going to be a lawyer. It's just not in my DNA. But the brokerage side definitely spoke to me more. And I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now, and it's been a good ride so far.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's the right way to do it for sure.
For sure. So now that we understand a little bit about, you kind of took that leap of faith. You're now operating the investment firm Monte Carlo. I kind of wanted to touch base on what is your investment thesis? Like what exactly, or how are you targeting what properties are you targeting? Do you have particular metrics that you're trying to achieve? And maybe give us an idea of why you decided this is the route I want to take.
Yes. So as I was jumping into the real estate field, I came across self-storage, and it made complete sense that self-storage is a very good asset class for good times and bad times, and decided to jump into, trying to find a good property that has some value add there. And so what I look for is numbers that make sense. So either it can be adding value through, increasing rents and decreasing costs, or building more facilities. So if there's room for expansion, those are the main things that I look for. I try to target, at least 15% cash on cash. And obviously it's a little bit hard right now to get that, but within a few years, you can always get there and then some, plus, the property value increase. So those are some of the things that I look for.
Awesome. And then how do you determine which markets to invest in? Because, I've talked to different people who invest in self-storage really across the country. And, the demand for storage is going to be different depending on what market you look at. They say the 7 square feet per person is kind of the average, but that may not be the case in a sub-market within Louisville. I know Dallas has a much higher per square foot requirement, or not requirement, but demand profile. So how do you kind of determine what exactly you're looking for, or I guess how to analyze what you're looking for in a particular market?
Yeah, besides availability of square footage per person, I look at the market, if there's population growth over time, if properties values have been increasing over time, which that's a given for the entire country, I guess, this year. And, different industries in that area, those are the things that I mainly look at.
Definitely. That would make sense. And, and self-storage is definitely an interesting model too, because, I don't know from an absorption standpoint how it plays out, but there's a lot of it. I feel like it's a fractionalized type of market too, where there's a lot of mom and pop shops out there that don't really advertise probably as effectively as they can. There's probably a lot of there's also, I remember looking at a self-storage deal a while back. It was a small one here locally, and they were still collecting paper money. Like, there was a gentleman who would pay, I think it was like $80 a month, and he would just slip an envelope underneath the door every month. And it was just like, how are you still accepting, this way of doing business? But it very much is still a business that operates in that function. And I think it's starting to transition more and more as it's becoming a lot more institutionalized, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there in that property type because of the fact that it is still fractionalized. So it's very, very interesting to hear you say that.
You're talking about like analyzing properties and kind of growing your portfolio. And speaking of scaling your business, what are some of the struggles that you faced and overcame scaling your business?
Well, at some point you start to run out of money. And so you got to do some syndications. I'm about ready to get started on some syndications.
That's great.
And that was by design. I wanted to, show potentially future investors that this is what we have done before. And so, it's not like, hey, I just want to invest in real estate. Give me your money. So just show some numbers and prove that we have good track record. So that would be the biggest one, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, like you said, at a certain point, you hit a wall as far as your own capital is concerned. And I think a lot of people get to that point and they say, okay, well, what is the next step? I can either wait and, try to build up capital reserves, or I can start going to the marketplace and, telling a story, because I feel like that's really what's going to compel someone to want to invest with you is understanding your story, understanding who you are as a person from a character standpoint and integrity standpoint. And then from there, the opportunity will play out. I mean, if you look at, 14 or 15 different deals, and they're going to have somewhat similar IRRs for the most part. I mean, there may be some that are outliers, but, the target rate IRR for a lot of these opportunities is going to be kind of in line with what the market is at that particular time. But really what you're investing in, who you're investing in is what is most important. Who's the operator of that opportunity? And then how are they performing over a consistent period of time? And when things go wrong, because inevitably things go wrong. So you really have to have faith in the character and the integrity of the individual that you're going to be investing with to determine, okay, is this going to be a good opportunity for me or not? So.
Absolutely. Agree.
Definitely. So one thing I really wanted to touch on, which I think is great, what you've been doing for a while now, is your brand building efforts, and you've focused primarily on the podcast format. So for those of you guys who don't know, Steffany has had a podcast for quite some time. I've listened to several of her episodes. I would highly encourage you guys to check out the podcast. She really does provide awesome insights. I remember one podcast episode that I listened to recently was with you were talking to a gentleman who was going to buy a triple net investment property, and you were trying to give him feedback as far as whether or not it was a worthwhile pursuit. I believe he was a nurse, and he had some money that he wanted to invest in this particular property, but the cap rate was like a 4.5%, and there were some other things you had to consider because of the fact it was a large corporate tenant. There may be provisions within the lease that restrict how much rent can be increased over time. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider. So all that to say, how has the podcast helped your brand building efforts?
So I haven't raised funds yet, so I don't know how, I will do at that point in time, but I think it's a phenomenal way little backstory, I decided to really put the first episode when my ex and I broke up, because I'm like, okay, now I need some mentors, and how am I going to meet people? And so that was one of the reasons why I started, and it has been a great way to meet people. And whenever I have a question, I say, okay, I'm going to interview somebody in the legal department because I have questions, or when I have tax questions. And obviously I'm not the only one that will have these kind of questions. And so that part has been great. And so I build maybe through that and, going to very niche conferences within the real estate field, been able to build my network by about 500 people that are on my Excel spreadsheet. And, I tag them by industry and also where they live. If I'm in that area, we should catch up and things like that. If they're potential partners, tag them that way as well. And so I think it's great for, you have to start somewhere. And so whatever format you start, it can be TikTok and podcast, blog, video, YouTube videos, or anything like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think there's utility in it outside of just the reach perspective. I also think from a communication standpoint, being able to explain yourself in a cohesive way is amplified by you being in a podcast setting, or like you said, YouTube, whatever. Being able to communicate effectively with a broad audience of people is going to translate in any industry that you're in. And I think, having something like a podcast that you can, document your learning, because that's what you're doing a lot of times is you're reaching out to people. I mean, the fact that we're sitting together right now and talking, I mean, I learned a lot from our conversation, and had I not reached out, had I not, been able to connect with you, and I did connect with you because of your podcast. I mean, that's a direct reason why I did that. So it's one of those things where, outside of the network gain, which is, I think, immense, I also think that there's some utility from a personal development standpoint, from, being able to effectively communicate with others. And I don't know what you think. What about you, Jeff? What do you think about that?
I mean, I think both of you kind of nailed it on the podcast format, but also on top of that, I'd like to stack on it is not just the connections and the reach and the communication, but the knowledge that you've gained from people and all their experience, because not everyone's written their own book. Not everyone has put the 1 through 100 steps it does to do a syndication, or, and everybody has their different version, and, you have to figure out which one way works for us. And I think, I commend you on the podcast, because how long has it been going on now? I didn't go as far.
2.5 years.
That's amazing to have that, and just think about like all that knowledge that you've gained just for the 2.5 years of all those episodes. I mean, I'm sure it's like you could go back and think, wow, when I first started, where I was until today. I mean, where you're at, just from connections and the reach and knowledge that you've gained from that. I think I can commend you again. I think it's great that you've done that. And I mean, it shows you start something and you put it to the test and you worked at it, and now look where you're at. I mean, I don't know if you say it's all from the podcast, but from outside looking in, I feel like you've grown, partially because of that, in my opinion. But but anyways, speaking of all that and books that you ever read, nobody's done that, is to start kind of closing out the podcast is we like to ask which one of the most impactful books that you've read. It could be recently or in the past, and it doesn't necessarily have to be commercial real estate, but just something to that's maybe changed your life. Or
I love the Bible. I'm a Christian, but I would say The Magic of Thinking Big has been the most impactful in my life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that being that, could you kind of elaborate what are some of the key points within that book that kind of spoke to you? I'm just kind of curious. It's not one that I've read, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
It's really how, it's just like all these other books. They all say the same thing in a different way, but it's basically how, when you really think about where you want to go and what you want to accomplish, that those are the things you start to see, because you start to say, okay, I could build a relationship with this person instead of, thinking the opposite, or let's say people are a victim or they hate their jobs. Why not say, okay, this is where I want to get, and then that is where your attention starts to go, and you start to see potential possibilities to get there. That's basically the gist of the book. That's
awesome. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of, I read, there's this book that I read, gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but As a Man Thinketh, it's a great book. And there's several other ones that, The Man's Search for Meaning, that was it. That's probably one that was the most impactful for me, as far as that mindset piece is concerned, because
Mm-hmm.
the gentleman who wrote the book, he went through a catastrophic situation. He was in a concentration camp in Germany at the time, and he had gone through that many years of quote unquote suffering, but he was able to find meaning in that suffering and come out of it stronger and more positive than ever. And so it puts life into perspective and shows that, if they can go through something like that, if you look yeah. at, you can look at someone who has gone through some horrific things in their life and they're able to come out of it on the other side stronger and more resilient and more positive than ever, then what excuse do we have to be anything less than that? So, that was something that really spoke to me. And, every person in life is going to have their own role models. They're going to have their own people they look to. And for me, it was my grandparents, and I could see pieces of them in that book. And so when I read that book, I was like, oh, okay. I'm on the right track as far as my perspective in life and understanding that, we're here for a reason and it's bigger than ourselves. And when things run into you and you feel, like you're not making any progress or, you're down on yourself, realize that other people went through worse and they were able to come out on the other side. So, yeah.
100%.
Definitely when you speak about anyone's grandparents, I mean, 100 years ago, where were they, what were they doing? Yeah. They were struggling to put food on the plate and stuff. So that's where, so.
That's awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much, Steffany, for stopping by. We really do appreciate your time on the podcast. Right, pretty much to round out the interview, what we like to do is we like to ask our guests really to provide something to what we call the commercial real estate treasure chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience. And it could be, a helpful PDF. We've had people contribute ebooks, Excel sheets, etc., newsletters, etc. What are you willing to contribute today?
I haven't built a PDF ebook yet, but I do have a newsletter that goes out about once a week at montecarlorei.com. That's where you subscribe to it. So that's what I'm more than happy to share.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll include that. So for those of you guys who do log into the commercial real estate treasure chest, it'll be under the episode image, and it'll, you can access it there and you can sign up for Steffany's newsletter. I think it'll be very much worth the time to subscribe. So,
Steffany, I want to say as well, we definitely appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your story and your journey. I love hearing about that. It was amazing. And I know our listeners and viewers are going to want to learn more about you. So I want to know, like, how can we get in contact with you for them to maybe possibly do a deal with you or get on your podcast? How would you like them to contact you?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. This has been really great. I truly enjoyed this. I'm on all social medias. Maybe LinkedIn might be the easiest, or through the website contact us form. Any way you want to reach out to me, I'll respond.
Definitely, and we'll include that in the show notes as well. So if you guys are watching this in a YouTube format, it'll be in the description below. And if you guys are listening to this in an Apple Podcast, Spotify, any type of podcast format, it'll be in this description below. So you guys will be able to reach out to Steffany and learn more about what she does, and maybe even potentially invest with her alongside her in her future deals. So, well, great. Well, again, Steffany, really do appreciate your time. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. It ensures more and more people can hear this message. If you guys are listening to this in an Apple Podcast, Spotify, really you name it regarding the podcast format, please leave us a 5-star review. We've seen a significant uptick in our downloads as a result of you guys being engaged with the podcast and leaving a 5-star review. So if you don't mind, we'd really appreciate that from you guys. And again, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.